Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another action-packed CALLOUS Draft League draft. This one's probably on paper the highlight match of the round. Couldn't not cover this one. We've got our CALLOUS Draft Duel champion, Zokuru, against very competent, very experienced drafter and team captain for the blue team, Zinc. Zokuru, if it matters for this, is on the green team, and unsurprisingly, he was the first overall pick when we did the draft to figure out the teams. But Zinc is one of the small number, the handful of players in this that has a realistic shot of beating Zokuru in this without needing a miracle. Not necessarily saying that he's better than Zokuru. Zok really does seem to have a very strong understanding of the strategy and the way that this format works, but I think Zinc is a very competent drafter and can at least give him a run. So let's see how this all plays out. Zok is our player 1 on the left-hand side. That was determined randomly via my bot. And Zinc is our player 2 in blue, fittingly, being on the blue team, on the right-hand side. So let's get into it. Zokuru with the first ban is going to take Metagross out. As I've said, there is a growing consensus that might simply be the best overall Pokemon in the format. It is certainly one of only a handful of things that you can make a valid argument for. On the flip side, both as a player 2 obligatory ban and also possibly because it's Zokuru, who seemed to have a whole heck of a lot of Tar Skarm Bliss somehow in CALLOUS Draft Duel, we're just going to remove Skarm, as most player 2s tend to do, and Zokuru has made it crystal clear that he is absolutely no qualms at all about first picking that as player 1 if it is left available for him. So you're faced with the choice as player 2 of let your opponent first pick it and be okay with that, or just get rid of it, and Zinc is going to do the same thing that most people have done, opting for the latter, just get rid of it. So Zokuru with that, going to take Celebi out of the pool. Fine with it. Overall, very powerful Pokemon. Slightly nerfed in that I have slightly modified the rules of this format from where they were in CALLOUS Draft Duel. Baton Pass is still allowed, and Sub Pass, which Celebi can do, is also still allowed. But Baton Pass plus Stat Boost, I did decide to get rid of, so not going to be able to Baton Pass Calm Minds anymore. Celebi's still really, really good just because you nerfed that one specific set, but nevertheless, Celebi takes a minor hit in that regard. Still a very powerful poke, and Zok doesn't want that in the field, so out it goes. And then unsurprisingly here, again, Zok likes this poke, and it's one of the pokes alongside the meta that very well may be the best overall poke in the format, very much in the conversation, simply removing T-Tar. So everything here, pretty standard, which is what I'm expecting all the way around. I'm expecting this to be a pretty clean, by the book, up to date with the current meta kind of draft. I really don't see Zinc trying to get too cute against Zokuru here. I think he's going to have to just play him straight up and draft really well and see where you end up. So Zok, with a variety of options here, is going to go for Snorlax, which is not what I would have predicted that he goes for here. I would have thought maybe he takes Salamence or Gengar, but he's going to opt for Lax, which I don't hate, and Skarm and Celebi and Metagross and T-Tar. Man, all four of those are kind of good against Lax, so I guess with the way that the bans fell, maybe this would be a better opening option than Salamence or Zapdos or Gengar or some of the other options here. I still think Lax, while obviously good, is a little bit overrated in this because between all the viable fighters, the Leech Seeders, the Sableyes, the Weezings of the world, I really do think it's very possible to have teams where there's 2-3 legit checks on Lax per team, which makes it not as busted as it could be. But it's obviously good. I don't hate this pick. Don't know that it's the pick that I would have made necessarily, but Zok's the champ and I'm not, so we're going to let him do what he thinks is best, which, as we said, in this case, is apparently Snorlax. So, on the flip side, Zinc taking it to the air, opting for both Zapdos and Gengar here. Zapdos obviously not amazing into Lax, but it's so early that he's not necessarily counter-focused at this stage. Might very well just be taking the best stuff. Gengar can be good against Lax. It can also not be good against Lax, eating a Shadow Ball or having it be refreshed Lax or what have you. But there's just counterplay back and forth. What if it's refreshed Lax? What if it's Taunt Gar? So on and so forth. Generally, Lax gets the better end of that matchup, but again, I think we're so early that it is not quite about counter picks just yet. It's just about taking the best stuff. But this is going to really give you perspective as to how Zokuru views the format, and it's also going to majorly influence the rest of this draft. So I really doubt that Zinc saw this particular double pick coming, but Zoc is going to opt in his second overall round of picks for Regice and Blissey, which is triple fighting weakness, by the way, but Houston, we have a problem. I mean, Celebi gone, Lax, Regice, Blissey all of a sudden gone very quickly. Holy special walls, Batman. Zinc is really going to have to get creative. All of a sudden, there's only like a couple of them that are viable. Maybe he takes an earlier than normal Registeel, I mean, or he settles for like Ludicolo, or he tries to run like Raikou as a special wall. I mean, I'm not saying there aren't options. I mean, even Zapdos itself can be a special wall. I'm not saying that he's going to have no special walls at the end, but what I am saying is that literally the three best ones all got taken 1, 2, 3 by Zoc, and that is obviously going to largely affect this draft and dictate where they both go from here. I would like to see Zinc go for the obvious thing, not necessarily right now, but hit it pretty hard in round 2 and really focus on fighters and try to capitalize, but there's a good chance that Zoc will either also take fighters or ban out fighters, so there is a limited window to do that, but certainly with the triple fighting weakness here, I'd be looking at rock attackers, like I think Aerodactyl would definitely be one of my picks right now if I were Zinc. I'd strongly consider an earlier than normal Hariyama or Metacham or what have you. But it's going to be a polarizing draft taking 3 special walls this early. That means things like Alakazam, Sceptile, Raikou, whatever, might not be that great for Zinc. It really, I think, is going to revolve around these picks, and we haven't seen a draft quite like this, so we'll see how Zinc responds to this, but Blissey maybe, but I really doubt he was expecting the Regice this early, let alone taking both of these in one go. So the response, and like I said, I think this is like obligatory given what's already been taken. Aerodactyl I agree with. Swampert, I'm not sure. Swampert might be a protection pick for his own Aerodactyl, which I don't hate. I think I personally, I don't know, it just feels early for Swampert for me unless you have a very specific reason, which in this case, unless it's protection for Arrow, he doesn't really have a specific reason. Swampert's not great against anything on the other side. Granted, it can have Focus Punch, but still, I don't really consider a Swampert a counter per se to any of the things on the other side. So I think I'd rather in Zinc's seat here go like Arrow Salamence or something to that effect. I can even see, if you want to play the Spikes game, going Arrow Fortress here. If you're going to take a water, I might consider Milotic over Swampert here, but he might be looking at it and being like, I've got a Zapdos, I've got a Gengar, they're both going to have electric attacks, bring on the Milotic. I don't hate that, and obviously Milotic isn't as good into your Aerodactyl than Swampert is, so like, I can get how he can talk himself into Swampert here. I still don't know that I'm personally on board. I think Swampert's fine in this, but I don't think it's incredible. I think something like a Salamence, that's the one that's really standing out to me. But a Salamence, a Fortress, maybe even just Milotic are probably picks that I would have gone for in this position over the Swampert. Nevertheless, this is what he did, and now it falls on Zokuru to respond, and this is pretty insane value. I think that Zokuru's start is pretty incredible. You can't ask for too much more. This super duper fits in the philosophy of the format for him. Just solid, matchup neutral, reliable, sturdy things with recovery moves, with access to paralysis, with coverage. Everything but Blissey here, or but Milotic here, rather. is like not a do-nothing Mon, is not an offensive liability. It just, yeah, this is about as good of a 5 as you can ever have as a starter. Zokuru somehow just has this majestic draft already, and not that Zinc is bad by any means, but just like Zokuru, as much as I like to give him a hard time and call him a snail eater, which he totally is, he obviously gets the format, and he drafts really well. I don't. Zinc is going to have to go all in. I think he's just going to. I don't even. He already. I'm not clear how the heck he gets out of this already. He's going to have to go a very physically focused route, I would say. I don't see how you can try to plow through this with special attackers. Even if you try to, like, Moltres your way through or whatever, burn the lax, fry the Regice, I mean, you're going to get met with, like, Milo Starmie. That doesn't crack through. It's going to be a hard road. I think Zinc needs to go very physical from here. I think special attacking plans are almost out the window already from Zinc. But these picks are shocking to me. I would have taken the Salamence before. I would certainly take the Salamence now, but he's going to pass on it again, which I find very surprising. I would always take Salamence here, but he is instead going to opt for Dugtrio and Registeel. I don't know that I would make either of these picks. I'm more okay with the Registeel because, as you guys know, not a Dougie fan. I mean, without even going on my Dougie rant, it's just like, what is it that you're trying to hit? A lot of the better targets, the Metagross, the Celebi, the T-Type, that stuff's all gone. I mean, it's like Blissey, kinda, and yes, it does give him the Zapdog synergy, and Starmie, kinda, and that's kind of it right now. Down the road, does Zokuru draft some more targets for Dugtrio? Yeah, probably, and I mean, Zapdog is a good combo when it's beat up Doug specifically, rather than just relying on EQ. That is one of the better ways to remove Blissey if he happens to find that specific matchup, so it's a plan, I guess, but not what I would have taken here. I can't believe he's letting both Fortress and Salamence go back here, which is probably the 1-2 that Zoc is going to take, and it's just, Zoc is going to be staring down one of the best round ones that we've seen in the whole existence of this format. It's like unrealistically good, like something has gone wrong, like your opponent taking a Swampert and a Dugtrio, and they probably shouldn't, to somehow allow a start as good as Zokuru's is. And of course, he does exactly what I say, and this is ridiculous. Look at this round one for Zokuru. Again, not like Zinc has bad Mons, but like, holy Christ here for Zoc. It's a dream. It's a dream round one. I mean, he's going to have to really F up the rest of this draft for Zinc to somehow catch up. I really strongly favor Zokuru's position already, and we're only through the first round of picks and bans. Another thing that Zokuru did, coincidentally or deliberately, is he's shoring up that fighting weakness a bit. So I still do think Zinc should grab some fighters, and I still do think that Zoc will probably ban some fighters. But that being said, both the Starmie and the Mence, with their fighting resistances, are going to help and alleviate that issue a bit just by being what they are. So the first ban is going to fall on Zinc, and this is a head scratcher for me. So Zinc wants Claydol out. I find that very unusual. Two of the best spinners in Starmie and Fori are already on the other side. So you, Zinc, who needs spinners more, is gonna be the dude who bans one out. What spinners are you planning on taking down the road? Are we going like Cloyster Blastoise or something? Do we have a Dawn fan in our future? And if you do have a Dawn fan in our future, why don't we just have a Claydol instead? It's really strange when he's got no spinners and his opponent has the two spinners, how he just like goes ahead and does Zoc a favor and makes it so none of the top 3 spinners are available to Zinc. I don't get that ban at all. It's really strange to me. Is Claydol even that good against what Zinc has? It's like mildly good against Zapdos and Registeel, I guess. That's a puzzling ban for me and not one that I can get behind, but I would love to know in the comments what you guys think, why he made that ban or what his thought process might have been. It's not computing for me. Zokuru, unsurprisingly, is going to take out a fighter. Like I said, short up the weakness a little bit with Starmie and Salamence, but the fact remains he's got a team that's generally on the slower side, and he's got these 3 fighting weaknesses. Not surprised to see it go. He's got his pick of the litter of which one he least wants to play against, and he decides that that's Hariyama. But Medicham, Breloom, Machamp, Blaziken, Heracross, lots of very viable fighters in this. Pick your poison, but for now, the one that he least wants to deal with is seemingly Hariyama. So back to Zinc. I'm not getting it. I'm not understanding the draft strategy here. Gonna go with Jolteon. I can see, like, if you envision yourself thunderbolting with Zapdos and Gengar, that you don't want a good Volt Absorb on the other side, and likewise I could see that you don't want something that coin flips with your arrow, and like you don't want to lose a game to a speed tie. I got all that, but I'm also seeing a Jolteon that is a real threat against Milotic, that is a real threat against Starmie, that can be a real threat whether it's T-Wave or HP Ice rather, against Salamence, and then it's one of those rare special attackers. Against these special walls, it can just baton pass out and set you up for something good. Many other special attackers just have to get out of the way and make a blind prediction and hope that you're right. But Jolteon can do it very safely because he BPs, and then of course when you BP, you already have the information if your opponent did or did not switch, and then you can go to whatever you want based on that information. So like Jolteon is actually fine into Lax, Regice, Blissey, because it'll never ever stay in those matchups unless it wants to. And like I said, it's a threat against Milo, Starmie, Salamence. So again, to me, Jolteon feels like something he maybe should have considered taking rather than something that he should be banning. So both of these bans to me for Zinc are head scratchers, and it's early. We haven't even picked half the pokes, so I don't want to write them off yet. But I'm usually able to pinpoint when I'm watching these drafts where someone's going and what their strategy might be. And I'm absolutely unclear as to where Zinc is going with this, but it is not where I would have been going if I'm drafting in his seat. And then finally, Zokuru is going to take out another fighter. Breloom, he's been pretty vocal. He thinks is busted. It really depends. Again, Medicham, Heracross, Blaziken, bunch of viable fighters in this, but the fact is that Spore is a broken move. Spore is arguably the most broken move in the entire game, and you'll always find an opportunity with Breloom to get it in and get a Spore off, and even if it does nothing else for the rest of the game, it's basically totally incapacitated something. It really is that good for Spore alone, and if it happens to get a Focus Punch off or actually hit something for a little bit of damage, gravy. But Spore is busted and Zokuru's team is slow. Wouldn't be too difficult to find an opportunity to get Loom in and get a Spore off. So again, makes sense to me. I could see why Zokuru would want those things to not be there. So over to Zinc. Interesting stuff. He's going to go Regirock and he's going to go with Cloyster. So I don't hate the Regirock pick, maybe a smidge early, but I could see why he would feel compelled to take this. He's got already the Rock Week in the Zapdos and the Aerodactyl, neither of which are great into Regirock, and he's adding an additional Rock Week here in Cloyster, so he very well may view it as good against the stuff that he has, so it's a little bit of a protection pick. On the flip side, as far as being good against Zokuru, it seems like okay. It's okay. It's reasonable against Mens. It's okay. Again, not great, but reasonable against Lax. Obviously could pressure Regice. Not great against the Waters. Not great against Fori. Doesn't really threaten Blissey unless it, like, focus punches it or booms it or whatever. So, like, it's neither great nor terrible against Zokuru's team. I think it's fine, but I think there's definitely an element when he just took another rock resist, or rock weakness, rather, that he doesn't really want to play against a Regirock, despite the fact that he does have 2 rock resist, Swampert and Registeel. No, Dugtrio does not count. On the flip side, Zokuru. Actually, let's go back to Zinc real quick, because I think the Cloyster is weird too. I mean, he's taking it probably as a spiker more than a spinner. But if you want a spinner, why did you ban Clay at all? Alright, back to Zokuru. Charizard Medicham here. So, the Medicham, I mean, good in general, but I think part of it is that one of the ways to deny spikers from your opponent, other than just banning them, is to just take them. So I think that's part of the pick, because I look at the board for Zinc, and, like, he's got a couple fighting weaknesses. He did just add 2 more of them, so he's got a total of 3 right now, but he also has the fighting immunity, the fighting resist. He's got Dugtrio that can revenge kill grounded fighters. So, like, fighters are only okay into Zinc. They don't blow me away, but like I said, I think part of it is defensive-minded, in that he knows that fighters are reasonably good against him, doesn't want to play against them, and therefore takes them. The Charizard, I think, is a wise pick. It is obviously a threat against the Fori and the Regice, and the fact that it is Focus Punch, unlike Moltres, makes it a threat to Blissey and Snorlax as well. Like I said, Moltres not as good against Zoc as Charizard would be. If Zinc were to take Moltres, it would have to punch through Blissey, Milotic, Starmie. Easier said than done, but Charizard is able to punch through some of those Mons. So I think these picks are largely defensive-minded for Zokuru. Again, Mons that are just good on their own, but I think very much on his brain is the fact that these are both threats to his team, and that he doesn't want his opponent to have them. On the flip side, Zinc is going to opt for the strategy of both taking a threat and taking a counter to that threat. So he's going to opt for Heracross, which that's actually the first fighter that he's taking, which really shows how dedicated Zoc has been to blocking them with the double ban and then grabbing one. So there's only after this, for viable fighters anyway, Blaziken and Machamp remaining. And then alongside the Heracross, he's going to take Weezing, which I think is a good pick that serves double duty. It's not only going to be good against the Lax for sure, but it also protects his Heracross quite a bit, because Weezing really hoses Heracross, as in general. It's also going to probably be good against, like, Medicham and Salamence. Salamence maybe a little bit less so. You can go with, like, a mix set, Dragon Claws hurt Weezing, what have you. But it does keep it off of DD Ments, probably. And like I said, it is going to be good against Medicham. This is not Emerald Open. He's not going to roll up with Psychic Medicham. You don't know that the Weezing's coming. It's going to be good against Cham, going to be decent against Ments, going to be good against Lax for sure. And like I said, it protects his Heracross, and his Aerodactyl. So yeah, I can be talked into the Weezing pick without too much issue. I think Weezing is underrated in this, and I think somewhere in mid to late round 2 is generally where it belongs. So no qualms with that particular pick. Zokuru is going to come back with D-Knight and also with Raikou. And yeah, that's kind of the weird dynamic of the way that this draft is played out. The fact that Zoc has, like, so monopolized the special walls. Yes, there is a Zapdos. Yes, there is a Registeel on the other side, but it overwhelmingly, that aspect has favored Zokuru. The fact that it played out that way has really made it so Zinc is not all that incentivized to take generic special attackers like Raikou or like the aforementioned Alakazam or Sceptile. And in doing so, it means that Zokuru, if he wants, can then take those things later than he normally should be able to. And this is a perfect example of it. We saw Raikou banned in an earlier draft. The draft that it's not the one that I covered, but somebody first picked Raikou in one of these drafts that is not yet on YouTube and may not be on YouTube, but it's a thing that happened. Clearly, a lot of people value Raikou higher than these two guys do. But like I said, from Zinc's end, staring down Lax, Regice, Blissey, he might not be all that damn enthused to take it. But Zokuru, into a Dugtrio drafter, mind you, is going to take Raikou here, and I really don't hate it because, I mean, Dugtrio aside, it seems like a real threat. Do any of Zapdos, Gengar, Aerodactyl, Swampert, Regirock, Cloyster, Heracross, Weezing, do any of those want to switch into a Raikou, never mind a +1 Raikou or a Raikou behind a sub or what have you, it seems pretty good into Zinc's team as it stands. Again, there's a Dugtrio, but only a 1 in 3 chance that those two end up against each other. I like the Raikou pick, and I think that Zinc is going to have to address the special situation, but he's kind of in a rock and a hard place, because if you take like a Zam or a Sceptile, it isn't that good, but if you let your opponent take him, it's pretty good against you. So really in a rock and a hard place after that Lax Regice Blissey opening sequence, and like Zinc has done some good things, but I don't know that he's really done enough to ever recover from how good of a start that was. That being said, and I didn't even talk about the Dragonite because it's just general good mon, but swinging it back, sticking with the fighter plan and the viability, like I said, there's very few left, but gonna grab Machamp here, and then he's also going to take Dusclops. The Machamp, I think, is the right decision over Blaziken in this context, given the Milotic Starmie on the other side that make Blaziken much, much worse. So if you think that fighters are good against your opponent, which I would agree with, then I guess Machamp is what's left. As far as the Dusclops, sure, it probably stops Starmie and Fortress as far as spitters are concerned. So if you're just going to have at least the one pairing of the Cloyster and the Dusclops, then I guess you probably are going to be able to keep your spikes down. Zokuru prefers Sableye over Dusclops in this format, but it is circumstantial, and like I said, if your goal is just to stop Fori and Starmie, then sure, I guess Dusclops is your guy. We'll see if that ends up being good for him or not. I don't know that it is good against a lot of the rest of this stuff, against Salamence, Raikou, Dragonite, Medicham, Charizard, what have you, but for the specific purpose of stopping the two spinners that Zokuru has, perhaps it will do the trick. Zokuru is now going to add a second spiker into the fold. Glalie, in my mind, the best spiker remaining. Some people are Smeargle fans, but for me, Glalie is superior to Smeargle in this format, but to each their own. And then he's going to grab Arcanine as well, which I think is a wise pick. Arcanine, very much able to shut down Charizard, no longer an option. And then Arcanine is also going to provide a little bit of love. It's actually quite good against Heracross, believe it or not. Intimidate is going to be good against both fighters. It's going to be good against Registeel, going to be a decent generalist. I think that Arcanine is good in this, and I think it makes sense that Zoc's picking it. And it just fits his overall strategy of things that are just generally bulky and generally useful and generally versatile, and just figuring out what to do with them from there. But I think solid, sturdy utility mons is the name of the game as far as Zokuru is concerned, and it's hard to argue with results. He is unbeaten at this time in this format. And Zinc now is going to end round 2 with a little bit of spice, a double normal pickup here. Going to go to the Animal Kingdom as he takes both a cow and a kangaroo. I don't hate that. I think these are two good mons, two good generalists. Miltank has thick fat, so it is often utilized as a fire counter, Charizard in particular, but the fact that he also just took Arcanine, and I guess to a lesser extent Glalie, is going to further incentivize you. There's also the Regice on the other side, so a lot of fire and ice going on over here. So if you're valuing a good mon with thick fat, Miltank is your guy, and that's also going to give him his first Heal Bell option, which is also useful. So I think that's a heads-up pick, and Miltank fits the bill. I think that was a nice little pick. Kangaskhan, not really anything in particular. It is sometimes picked as a sleep counter with that early bird ability, but the prominent sleepers, Breloom is banned, and Smeargle is yet to be picked. I don't think that was why it was picked in this context, but a pretty good generalist, and it is obviously more physical-based than special-based, which I think is where he wants to be, and he did make a point to take things like Heracross, like Weezing, like Machamp, like Dusclops that would all give Kangaskhan a hard time, so he's cleared a bit of a path for it and has probably enabled it to be relatively successful. So I think that is a good pick as well. I like the double normal at the end of round 2. All that being said, going into round 3, while I do think Zinc had a decent round 2 and did a lot of good things, I still don't think that he's caught up after the devastation that was Zokuru's round 1. And I really don't know what he even could do at this point in round 3. that would realistically make him catch up. I think it was just such an insurmountable hole with that opening sequence. So I'm still feeling like Zok is winning this draft, but let's bring it home with the final round of bans and then picks. Starting with Zokuru, he is going to opt for Venusaur. As the Snorlax drafter, incentivized to take Leech Seed users out of the pool, he also doesn't like things that are faster than a lot of his team with sleep attacks. So in the same vein of the Breloom ban, I can see why he would want Venusaur to not be there. Makes plenty of sense to me. This ban clearly targeted at Zokuru. Sableye, his beloved, not going to be an option for him. Interesting that Zinc did not consider taking Sableye against the Lax, but perhaps he doesn't like it as much as Zokuru does. Zokuru quite high on that Pokemon, picked it repeatedly during his championship run in CALLOUS Draft Duel, but it will not be part of this. That is a targeted ban because he knows that it is a pick that Zokuru likes to make late in these drafts. He did his homework, and Zok will not have the pleasure of teaming up with Sableye, in this draft. So, Zokuru going to ban out the final viable fighter, at least in my mind. I guess there's a Hitmonlee and Hitmontop and Poliwrath and that kind of stuff. I think those mons are all junk. I think this is the last premier fighter. And despite the presence of the two water mons, Milotic and Starmie, I could still see, and he did add another fighting weakness, by the way, in Glalie, why he wouldn't want to play against fighters. Also, I think he was on the bad end, if I recall. But two players got absolutely smoked in CALLOUS Draft Duel, single-handedly by a Reversal Blaze. Again, Zok might have even been one of them. If so, PTSD. Not going to go through that again. And then finally Zinc, and this might be the only thing, one of the only things I could criticize Zokuru for. I feel like Zok has had a really strong draft, but maybe this is a minor point of criticism that I can levy at Zokuru, perhaps somewhere in this round 2 fold, maybe over Dragonite, maybe over Raikou, maybe over Arcanine, somewhere in the round 2 mix. Perhaps he should have taken Steelix because it really is very good against both Zapdos and Aerodactyl. And Zinc has got to breathe a sigh of relief to be able to get that out of there because it really would have been a hoser against those two key mons that are very much a large part of what Zinc is trying to do here. So maybe a tiny critique towards Zok. Maybe he should have found somewhere in round 2 to grab the Steelix. But other than that, Zok has done pretty much everything right, and I definitely agree with that ban for Zinc and could see completely why he would want to do that. So, on we go to the final round of picks. A late Gyarados for Zokuru, great value, doesn't matter that your opponent has a Zapdos, it's still just one of the overall most powerful Pokemon available, and another poke that he takes. I think this is also a really good pick. Porygon 2, underrated in this. Probably the third bulky water, and yes, I said that on purpose. I know it isn't actually a water type, but probably the third best bulky water in the format under Starmie and Milotic. You could argue how it compares to Swampert, but P2, it does a lot. It's quite bulky. Bolt Beam is relevant. T-Wave is relevant, and also he just picked that into a Dugtrio opponent. So I really like Porygon 2 here. Zokuru, I think, understands just how good it actually is, whereas I think other players have not caught on yet. But the truth is, Porygon 2 should be picked in every single draft, probably like late round 2, early round 3. It's quite good. It should never not get picked. And Zokuru, I think, is kind of ahead of the curve as far as figuring out this metagame, and I think he realizes just how good Porygon 2 is in this. So those are two monster picks in my opinion. Gyarados and P2 are both very powerful, and like I said, icing on the cake, takes the P2 into a Dugtrio drafter, probably pairs the P2 with Raikou, and prevents that from being an issue should he meet the Dugtrio in that matchup. Zinc on the other side is going to go with Flygon, and he's also going to take Armaldo. Starting with Armaldo, because there's less to talk about, it does give him a spinner, potentially. Not a great spinner, but a spinner. It would be his second spinner if he does, in fact, use it in that way. And then, of course, as I mention every time, Armaldo predominantly gets picked into Snorlax drafters, as it can be a legit one-on-one Snorlax counter, and that might be what he's going for here. Flygon, giving a rock resist there is going to again protect his arrow, and one thing that Zinc has done pretty well is load up on rock resists. Regirock kind of counts as a rock resist. Swampert, Registeel, Flygon are all proper rock resists, so he should have at least one of those. Weezing is also half of a rock resist. Machamp is also half of a rock resist, so he should have 1.5 or so rock resists on every team, which is very useful. It isn't the end of the world against Zokuru's team because he didn't load up on rock attackers, but Gyarados, Medicham, Charizard, Salamence, those are all things that might have rock attacks, but it's generally useful to have one way or another, and I think probably Zinc wants to add another Spiker somewhere. Flygon much, much better when paired with Spikes. Maybe there's a Smeargle in his future, wouldn't be surprised, but for now, we've got ourselves a Flygon. Whoa, sorry for the brief pause. I had to double take on this one. Huh. Okay. Well, I don't know what I'm going to say about this one. I think this is the first time in the history of this format that this guy has been picked. We've got a muck pick from Zokuru, and a relatively early muck pick. I mean, it's not early in the draft, but if you're going to pick muck at all, it's probably dead last. There's no chance that Zinc was going to take muck. Well, let's start with the Slowbro, because that one's a lot easier to explain. And of note, Vaporeon is still floating, and he had the option there, so he takes Slowbro with the option of taking Vaporeon. So that's going to give him a third or even a fourth bulky water. My Milotic, Starmie, Slowbro, Porygon 2, all to varying extents, play that role. So again, sticking with Zokuru's theme of just sturdy, reliable, bulky stuff. Pretty versatile stuff in this case with Slowbro. It just fits his theme. I get it. Slowbro is a good mon. It just makes sense. The one that really intrigues me is the muck. I'm not. Is it for the fighting resist? Are we looking at that? Are we seeing the Heracross and the Machamp on the other side? And I mean, Slowbro also resists fighting, but it gets cucked by Megahorn. Is that the thought process here? Are we taking two fighting checks? Are we still a little bit nervous about the Machamp and the Hera on the other side? Is that why we're getting a muck appearance here? Wow. Like I said, very first time, the whole time this format has existed, the entirety of CALLOUS Draft Duel, no muck, and I don't believe anyone else in the first round of this has opted for muck either. Super curious if that guy ends up making a team. It's good in UU, but how good is it in this? I don't know. Haven't given muck a lot of thought, but I guess Zokuru has. Spice pick for sure. Super cool to see. Muck's a very cool poke. Whether it's good or not is a different question, but it's very cool. I can't wait to see that play out. I really hope it does end up making a team. On the other side, we have Smeargle, unsurprising. Flygon pick, kind of a giveaway that he intended to add more spikes. And then Blastoise as well to not be left out of the Spiker Spinner war. The other option's kind of crappy. Tentacruel, Fringe viable, and then it really drops off a cliff. You get into Hitmons and Kabutops and junk like that. I think Blastoise clearly a cut above that kind of mon, and perhaps he wants another bulky water for himself since Zoc seems to be hogging them, keeping in mind, like I said, that Vaporeon is still floating if he wants to try to grab that. And then Smeargle, I mean, again, Spore is broken, but also a Spiker, so that is the second Spiker for him. Currently, 2 Spikers, 2 Spinners for Zinc, and then we're looking at, is it the same over here? Yeah, I guess it is 2 Spikers and 2 Spinners for both players. Fair enough. We'll see if either of them decide that they want a third Spinner somewhere in here. There's Donphan and Tentacruel for good ones, and then it kind of drops off. So we'll see if either of these guys think that it's necessary to pick up another Spinner. In the meantime, Zokuru is going to opt for Ludicolo. That is another kind of sort of special wall that Zinc is not going to be having. And then he's going to grab Kingdra as well. Same deal. Not great for Zinc to take Kingdra into Snorlax, Regice, Blissey, Milotic, but when Zokuru takes Kingdra, it's a lot scarier. I don't see a clear and obvious answer on Zinc's side of the board. These picks and how effective they are all just snowball domino effects from the early Lax, Regice, Blissey. Look at the board for Zinc. What comes in to a Rain Dance Kingdra when Kingdra clicks Rain Dance on the Switch? What are you switching in? I don't see anything that excites me to come in that situation. I think the Kingdra has the potential to blow the socks off of Zinc. And he just doesn't really have an answer right now. I don't know if you'd consider taking, like, Chansey or something, but the Kingdra's a real issue as it sits. And he's going to try to address it now with both of these picks. He's going to take a Water Absorb Mon, and this is a late Vaporeon, to be fair, so Zinc will have a bulky Water on all of his teams as well, in Swampert, Blastoise, and Vaporeon, so both players have more than enough bulky Waters to make sure every team has at least one, which is awesome. It shows you how valued they are in the format. Water Absorb specifically might be to address this Kingdra, and then he's also going to take the closest damn thing he can find at this point to a special wall, Umbreon. Not sure how well it takes Kingdra hits. Probably reasonable if you go full-on HP and special defense. Wish Protect Umbreon, stall the damn rain out, and go from there. Probably about as good of a bet as he's going to find at this point. And it also somewhat protects the Gengar if you thought Zoc was going to try to pursue it away. So given the Kingdra on the other side, which should be terrifying for him, I think at this stage of the draft, which is very, very late, Vaporeon Umbreon is probably about as good as you're going to do. And then finally, Zokuru is going to conclude things on his end with Ursaring, which was another pet pick of his. It's interesting that he values Ursaring over Tauros, but he may simply view it as a status absorber, which is fair. And then he is, in fact, going to pick up that third spinner just to be extra safe, opting for Donphan rather than Tentacruel, which I'm fine with. A little bit better against Arrow and Zapdos, for example. Also good against both Regirock and Registeel. So I do think that Donphan would be better in this matchup than Tentacruel would be. But yeah, wants to grab himself a third spinner just in case. And even if Zinc spends his last pick on a Spiker like a Quillfish or something, Zokuru will be prepared. But that is not what he's going to do. He's going to follow in the footsteps of what was done earlier. We're going to go with Last Poke Linoone. Don't know where this guy came from, but flavor of the month. I've covered 2 drafts, and they both have a Linoone. For those of you who didn't watch my previous draft, I don't buy it. It's like taking, Ninjask in this previously. Ninjask is awful in this now because it can't baton pass its speed boosts, but it's like taking Ninjask pre-rules change in this. It's one of those, it's a threat on paper, and it can gimmick you out, and it can do scary things, and it can just win if you get there, but it never actually works. It doesn't happen in a real game. It's a meme, it's a gimmick, it's cute on paper, but it never actually happens. And that's Linoone in a nutshell. You can have the dream where you get it in and you somehow belly drum and not die, and then you sweep them. It doesn't even one-hit KO everything from +6 with belly drum, which is kind of pathetic. And there's also the whole getting it in the first place and surviving the turn that you click belly drum. All of those things kind of a problem. I'm not really a Linoone believer, but there is no denying that there is a world sometimes where it does get off the belly drum and it just sweeps. Don't think it's too likely to happen here, and there's triple Intimidate on the other side, but a man can dream. Will we see one single Linoone sweep in this entire tournament? TBD, maybe Zinc will be the guy to do it. But yeah, the outro of this draft, I really don't have that much to add. I think I covered my thoughts as we went. I definitely give the advantage to Zokuru. I think that this opening sequence was devastating. You see things like Alakazam and Sceptile not even picked in this draft, which is highly unusual, but it's kind of the nature of the beast with the way these opening picks went for Zoc. I think after that, Zinc mostly did fine. I don't love the Dugtrio Registeel passing Fortress and Salamence back at the end of round 1, but by and large, I think Zinc was fine after that, but it was just such a big hole so early that I don't know what he really could have done without Zokuru blatantly choking, which I don't feel that he did, to get back into it. And like I said, the minor nitpick against Zok is like probably should have taken Steelix somewhere, but as it stands, I definitely favor Zok's position, and yeah, I don't see how the lopsided special attacker advantage and the defense against special attacker advantage that Zokuru very clearly has. I don't see that Zinc has enough to overcome that. So my prediction is going to be that Zokuru for now does remain unbeaten, undefeated in this format, and will take down this match. But as always, I want to know what you guys think, and that's why we have a comment section. So get on down there and let me know. While you're at it, please consider hitting the like button and the subscribe button. There will be lots more Callous Draft League content. Until then, hope you guys have a lovely day, night, afternoon, wherever it is where you're watching, and I will see you in the next video.